Amara was the kind of woman people whispered about but never dared approach. She wasn't just a CEO, she was the youngest board member of a billion-dollar luxury fashion empire, a figure carved from confidence and command. Her name echoed in business journals, magazine covers, and investor briefings across the globe. Every morning began the same. The sun would barely peek through the skyline when her penthouse lights flickered on. Amara stood by the full-length glass window sipping her espresso, black, no sugar. Outside, the city roared to life, but inside, silence reigned. Her heels clicked across marble floors as she moved like a queen through her castle, flawless, composed, untouchable. She didn't need to be introduced at meetings. She didn't ask for respect. She wore it like perfume. But no one ever saw what happened after 9 p.m. Behind the shimmering glass of her world, when the makeup came off and the phone stopped ringing, Amara sat in the kind of silence that echoed. It wasn't peace. It was emptiness. Her apartment, despite its design, felt too big. Her meals were delivered, never shared. And though she owned 15 designer coats, she couldn't remember the last time someone asked her if she was warm enough. Respected? Yes. Feared? Maybe. Loved? She wasn't sure anymore. That morning was different. A sudden breakdown. Her driver's voice trembled as he informed her that the Bentley had overheated near the 14th block. Traffic was chaos. A replacement car would take an hour. An hour she could have waited. But instead she stepped out, alone. For the first time in years, the air felt strange, less filtered, less perfect. She adjusted her coat and decided to walk, choosing a narrow, older lane that curved away from the glass towers. It was a road from her past, one she hadn't walked since she was a teenager. The buildings were smaller here, almost shy. A worn grocery store, a closed tailor's shop, and a tiny tea stall tucked between two rusted gates. The city seemed to exhale here. And that's when she saw him. He wasn't remarkable by appearance, no expensive shoes or branded coat, but his presence was calm, centered. He was placing a plastic chair for an old man near the tea stall. No fuss, no words, just care. He didn't look at her. Didn't gawk, didn't flinch. In fact, he barely noticed her at all. And that was new. Amara paused mid-step. She was used to eyes trailing her, people bending over backwards for a smile, a nod, anything to impress her. But this man, this stranger, he simply helped the old man sit, adjusted the chair's legs on the uneven pavement, and thanked the chaiwala with genuine warmth. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't for show. It was real. And in that quiet act, something shifted in her chest. She walked on, but she kept glancing back, as if trying to understand what had just happened. She didn't remember his face perfectly. She couldn't recall the brand of his jacket. But the feeling? It stuck, like a song from childhood. All day it echoed, in the boardroom, as charts and numbers danced on screens, at lunch as she picked at a salad she didn't like. During a call with the designer in Paris, she thought of his hands, the way they steadied the chair, the warmth in his voice, and that tiny smile, not crafted, not polished, just human. That night, as she lay in her bed, luxurious, imported, designed by some interior firm from Milan, she stared at the ceiling for hours. And she couldn't sleep. Not because she was anxious, not because of a deadline, but because, for the first time in years, she had felt something outside of her empire, something soft, something kind, and she didn't know what to do with it. She stood frozen at the edge of the tea stall, not because of the tea, not because of the street, but because of him. That face, worn but unmistakably familiar. The eyes, gentle, kind, still carrying the warmth of someone she once knew. Someone from a time when money meant nothing and dreams were all they had. His name was Arman, and once he was her everything. They had grown up just streets apart in the same neighborhood, before the city swallowed her into boardrooms and ambition, before the heels and the glass towers. There was Arman. Back then, he used to fix bicycles after school while she scribbled dreams in her notebook under the guava tree. He'd bring her sweet buns from the corner bakery, and she'd laugh at his silly jokes about life, love, and getting rich. They were just kids, reckless, real, and inseparable. But fate? It doesn't always ask. Her father got a big job in the capital. They moved. No warning, no goodbye, just distance, years of it. Now here he was, older, broader shoulders, lines near his eyes, but that same calm, earthy smile. "Amara?" he asked quietly, not fully trusting his own eyes. She couldn't speak. Her voice trembled somewhere between her heart and her throat. Then finally she said it. "Arman, you remember me?" He chuckled, a soft, humble sound. "How could I forget? You were the loudest girl in the neighborhood, the only one who called me Mr. Businessman while I fixed your brother's broken bike." They both laughed, and in that laugh something returned, something no amount of success or luxury had ever given her: comfort. He pulled out the plastic chair, the same one he had just adjusted, and offered it like it was a throne. She sat, awkwardly at first, her branded purse still in her lap. People passed. A few noticed. One even whispered, "Isn't that Amara Alvi, the business tycoon?" But she didn't care. For the first time in years, she felt human again. They talked. Hours passed like minutes. He told her about his tea stall, how he'd opened it with savings after his factory job shut down. No big ambitions, no complaints, just peace. He lived in a small room nearby, took care of his sick mother, didn't own a car, didn't have a bank account, yet somehow she had never met anyone richer in heart. He asked her nothing about her company, her wealth, her success. Instead, he asked, "Do you still write dreams in notebooks?" She smiled. "I stopped dreaming when I started managing people who forgot how to." There was a silence, not uncomfortable, but honest. Then he said, "Maybe. You just need a better place to dream." That day she didn't go back in her usual black car. She didn't call her assistant. She walked. And every step with him down that quiet street felt like peeling off another layer of her armor. The woman who led billion-dollar deals was now laughing at a joke about burnt samosas. A part of her, long buried, began to breathe again. But deep inside, something else stirred. Fear. She had built her life on stability, control, image. What would her world say if it saw her with a man who sold tea? What would her board think? What would her family say? And more importantly, what would he think if he knew how much she'd changed? Because no matter how long they talked, she hadn't yet told him the truth. That she wasn't just doing well. She was one of the wealthiest women in the country. A brand, a headline, a walking empire. She didn't want to scare him. She didn't want him to think she pitied him. Because she didn't. She admired him. More than anyone she'd met in all her years at the top, that night lying in her cold king-size bed. She whispered his name like a secret. Arman. And for the first time, in a long, long time, she wasn't afraid of falling asleep. she was afraid of waking up and realizing it had all been a dream. The next few days passed like something out of a storybook. Every morning she found herself drawn back to the tea stall. No guards, no drivers, no board meetings, just a cup of steaming tea. And Arman. They talked about everything and nothing. Sometimes she'd sit silently, just watching the steam rise from the kettle while he cleaned the counter with a soft cloth. Other times they'd laugh about silly memories from childhood. The time he fell off his bike while trying to impress her, or how she once got into a fight with a shopkeeper over 5 rupees. It was effortless, natural, real, and in those moments she forgot who she was. She wasn't Amara Alvi, CEO of Alvi Holdings. She was just Amara. But the world, it doesn't forget. One afternoon, a luxury black SUV pulled up near the stall. Out stepped a tall man in a grey suit, her personal assistant. He looked horrified. "Ma'am, the press is asking where you are. You missed 2 investor calls. The board is concerned." She didn't respond, just gently placed her half-empty cup on the wooden ledge and looked at Arman. There was no fear in his eyes, no judgment, just understanding. But her assistant wasn't done. He leaned closer and whispered, "This doesn't look right, ma'am, sitting here with someone like him." That did it. She stood, slowly, turned to face her assistant and the SUV full of watching eyes. Then said quietly but firmly, "Someone like him? You mean someone decent? Someone who listens without waiting to reply? Someone who doesn't want anything from me? Not even my name?" The assistant froze. She looked back at Arman, who despite everything was still smiling. She turned back to her assistant. "Tell the board I'm taking a personal break. A real one." And with that, she picked up her cup and sat back down. The SUV eventually drove away. But the moment stayed. That night, over quiet laughter and shared samosas, Arman asked gently, "What are you running from, Amara?" She hesitated, then finally said the words she had kept inside for years. "I've built a world where I'm always in control, where love is a transaction and time is money, but sitting here, with you, I feel everything I've spent years hiding." He looked at her, not as a millionaire, not as a business icon, just as a woman, and replied, "Then maybe. This isn't running. Maybe it's returning." But not everyone saw it that way. The next morning, her picture was on the front page. "Billionaire heiress seen at roadside tea stall. Romance or recklessness?" Photos of her sitting with Arman circulated online. Memes, speculation, mockery. The corporate world buzzed with gossip. Some called her unstable, others said she was losing control. Investors pulled back, shares dropped 4%, calls poured in from journalists, family executives. But she stayed silent, because for the first time in her life, she was choosing silence over strategy. Arman, however, noticed. He saw the way her hands trembled as she stirred her tea, how she suddenly spoke less. And then, one evening, he finally said what she feared most. "Amara, this thing between us, it doesn't belong in my world. Or yours." She looked up, startled. "No, don't say that. I'm just a tea seller, Amara. You live in a world of diamonds and deadlines. I don't want to become another decision for you to manage." Her eyes welled up. "I don't care about any of that. I care about how I feel when I'm with you." He nodded slowly. "I know. And that's why I have to protect it." He stood, gave her one last look, and walked away, leaving behind a silence louder than anything she had ever heard. That night she sat in her car, parked in front of the tea stall, long after it closed, the empty cups still on the counter, the faint smell of cardamom still in the air. And in that moment, surrounded by everything simple, she realized something powerful. She hadn't lost her heart. She'd finally found it. 3 days. That's how long she stayed away from the tea stall. 3 days without his voice. 3 days of silence, echoing louder than board meetings or market crashes ever did. She tried to return to her world. The glass offices, the flashing news tickers, the calls from investors. But nothing felt real anymore. Not the polished marble floors beneath her heels. Not the perfume-scented elevators. Not even the claps at the business award ceremony she'd won last night. She smiled for the cameras, posed with the trophy, made the speech. But her heart wasn't in the room. It was still sitting in that plastic chair, beside a man who sold tea, and made her feel like more than a brand. The next morning she made a decision. No security, no staff, no delay, just her. In a white cotton kurta, simple, unbranded, with her hair tied back and her heels left at home. She walked back. The tea stall was there. So was the empty bench. But not him. She asked the neighbor quietly, "Where's Armand?" The old man smiled. He left. Said he needed to get away for a while. Didn't say where. Her heart dropped. She sat down, hands trembling. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to do. She had faced hostile takeovers, global crises, even lawsuits. But this was personal. She had waited too long. That night she opened the old wooden box she hadn't touched in a decade. Inside, a dusty notebook filled with scribbles and dreams. Her younger self had written in big, messy handwriting, "One day, I'll love someone who doesn't care how rich I am." She smiled bitterly. She had that, and she lost it, because she was too afraid of what the world would think. The next page had a sketch of a small cafe with 2 chairs and a tree outside. And suddenly, she knew. The next day she did something wild. She walked into her boardroom, the very one where she used to control everything, and said, "I'm resigning, effective immediately." The room went still. One executive coughed. Another blinked. "Are you unwell, Ms. Alvey?" She smiled. "No, for the first time, I'm awake." She sold her shares, donated most of her wealth anonymously. She bought a small shop front on the edge of the same quiet street, and she rebuilt the tea stall. But this time, it was different. Still simple, still humble, but with wooden chairs instead of plastic, a handwritten menu, and a little sign above the counter. Amara and Armand's honest tea. She didn't know if he'd ever come back. But if he did, she wanted him to know he wasn't forgotten, and that she hadn't just changed her mind. She had changed her life. Weeks passed. Locals started coming, not for the tea, but for her story. Some still whispered, others laughed, but many stayed. Because the tea was good, and her smile was real. One rainy afternoon, she was cleaning the counter. A light drizzle tapped the wooden roof. She didn't hear him walk in, didn't see him standing just a few feet away, holding his old brown satchel. But when she looked up, she froze. And this time, he was the one who couldn't speak. She broke the silence. "I was waiting." He looked around. The chairs, the tree, the handwritten menu. Then quietly said, "You built this?" She nodded. "For us." He didn't rush toward her, didn't kiss her. He just walked up, took her hand and said, "You didn't have to give up your world for me." She smiled, eyes misty. "I didn't. I gave it up for me." You just reminded me who I was. He took a deep breath, then looked around again. It's beautiful. You haven't even tasted the tea yet. He chuckled. I don't need to. That evening, they sat together under the tree, just like in the sketch from her old notebook. 2 cups in hand. One life ahead. No boardrooms. No headlines. Just 2 hearts. Finally in the same place. Some stories don't end. They just settle. Like warm tea in a favorite cup. It's been 2 years since the day Armand returned. Since Amara gave up the world, they said she couldn't live without, only to find a life she never imagined. Now every morning starts the same, not with alarms or market news, but with the soft hiss of a kettle, the gentle clink of cups and laughter, the kind that comes not from jokes, but from knowing peace. Their tea stall has become something more. Locals call it the honest corner. No filters, no press, just people and stories, shared over steaming cups. Students come for quiet advice. Elderly men sit and sip in silence. Young couples brace each other there, as if hoping some of the love might rub off on them. And always, at the center, Amara and Armand. She still wears her watch from the boardroom days, not to keep time, but to remind herself how far she's come. He still wears his old leather satchel, not for money, but for memories. They don't talk much about the past, because they're too busy living the present. One evening, a woman in a suit walked up to the stall. Expensive heels, sleek bag, perfect posture. She looked just like Amara once did. She ordered a tea and asked, "Are you the Amara Alvi?" Amara smiled. "I used to be." The woman blinked. "You gave up all that power." "For this." Amara poured her tea with a steady hand. "Power didn't make me feel alive. This does." The woman looked around, then slowly smiled. "Maybe. You're still the most powerful woman I've ever met." That night, under the same tree, Amara told Armand, "I don't miss the applause. I don't miss the headlines." He replied, "You just miss the heels." She laughed. "Only a little," he lined in. "I miss your speeches, even your boardroom voice." She looked at him. "You still think I'm that woman?" He nodded. "You've always been her. Just finally free." They didn't build empires. They built peace. They didn't chase dreams. They lived them, slowly with open hands. And somehow, that was enough. Every so often, a child from the neighborhood will walk by and ask, "Who's that couple?" And someone will answer, "That's the lady who used to own the city, and the man who taught her how to feel again." The heart doesn't care about status. It doesn't count wealth. It remembers. Moments, smiles, touch, silence, and love, when it's quiet, consistent, and true. On the wall behind their stall hangs a frame. Inside it, the original page from Amara's old notebook. "One day, I'll love someone who doesn't care how rich I am." She doesn't look at it often, because now she lives it every day. Some stories don't need a dramatic ending. They just need a beginning that never stopped becoming. And for Amara and Armand, that beginning was never lost. It was just waiting in a quiet corner over a cup of honest tea. Some stories don't end. They simply find their place in quiet corners, over warm cups, in hearts that remember. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more Soulster Stories.